Hey everyone, welcome to Education Unlocked. We're so excited for another episode. I'm so excited to welcome Jessica to our podcast today. And before we get started, I do want to wish everyone an awesome and happy Friday. We're so excited for this amazing episode. And Jessica, now that I have you on here, I would love if you can share a little bit more about yourself to our listeners and give a little bit on your background. So excited to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So my career and my education started back in Pennsylvania. So I've come all the way across the country. Went to the University of Pittsburgh and ended up getting a bachelor's in education, elementary education. Then I went to Ohio University and got a master's in special education. And finally, I ended up out here in San Bernardino and went to Cal State and got my doctorate in educational leadership. My teaching career started about an hour from Pittsburgh in a all-male residential school for adjudicated juveniles. It's called the Summit Academy, and it was brand new when I started there. I was the only woman that worked there, so that was interesting. But he wanted me to do was create a program for reading instruction and GED prep, which we did very successfully. We ended up serving about 100, 150 students there in those specific programs. I started the program by myself
Wow.
and ended up with 2 additional instructors as we grew. So that was where I started, and I have worked in non-public schools. I've worked in county programs, and now I am in the public education sector. So that's a little bit about where I've come from. As far as my teaching career, I've taught every grade from K-12 as well as higher education and adults in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and California. A little bit of travel in there.
That's amazing. And, I feel like, going through such an amazing educational journey, you've been through so many different parts of the education space too. My question for you also is, how did you get into education? Was there something, when you were younger or like, when you were still, in school that you were like, yes, I want to go into education? Was there like a driving force or someone who was like a mentor that inspired you to hop into this space?
Well, interestingly enough, I I was at the University of Pittsburgh and I was trying to I wanted to be a physical therapist.
Okay.
And it was extremely difficult to get in, and you had to be really, really smart in the sciences. But at the same time, I started to work with adults with disabilities in a recreational setting. And my sister said to me, you know, I know this person, and she wasn't in education. I know this person who has a son who is autistic, and they need somebody to help them out. You want to try it? I was 18. I was willing to try anything at that point.
Yes.
And off I went. And I can't say that I loved it because he was nonverbal, but I got to experience a lot of the alternative ways that he learned. And he was exceptional on the piano. Just yeah, it was really so that really kind of got me thinking like, oh, maybe I could do this. Maybe I want to do this. And then I continued to work with at that time, I'm dating myself here. It was called the Association of Retarded Citizens.
Okay.
Definitely dating myself. And I worked with their summer camps and their adult education program and recreational programs. So I went through, I ended up switching over to education at that point, and the University of Pittsburgh did not have a special education program except as a master's degree. So I ended up doing elementary education first. And there was a teacher there, one of my professors, and I don't know why it struck me so much, but she said, don't ever worry about taking a day off, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of the children.
Exactly.
That has rung true with me to this day, and that's been quite a few years ago. So that's kind of how I got started. And then I went after I graduated, I ended up going into residential programs for adults with severe disabilities and ran those programs for a while. And then I ended up, interestingly enough, the man who opened the Summit Academy,
Yeah.
his daughter played softball for me. And he said, why are you doing what you're doing and not teaching in the schools. And I said, I don't know. He said, I have a perfect position for you.
Hmm.
And that's how I got started.
That's amazing to go from teaching into more of that coordination and the program coordination piece of it. What does that look like for you?
So for me, I've always wanted to do create programs.
Okay.
It's kind of been my specialty. When I was at the non-public school in Pittsburgh, I created curriculum, and it was a transition curriculum because I had high schoolers at that point. So we created a curriculum that would help them move to their next step of adulthood. How do we find a house? How do we find work? Um, how do we figure out this thing called adulthood and doing those kinds of things? So I did that. And then even in my application as a coach, I started a travel softball program for kids that really needed the financial support to go on to college. Um, so I started that program. I came out here and I was working in a county program, and I had the opportunity to create and this is when the county still got the mental health money. So we created a program for students with severe emotional and behavioral disorders that included social workers. The county
Okay.
social workers were able to come, and mental health workers it actually came into my classroom and worked with the kids side by side academically. So it's always been a passion of mine to create programs, and been able to do that in the classroom, but I wanted to do it on a larger scale. I feel like the more people that I can reach, the more adults I can reach, the more children I can reach. And to me, that is my passion. Uh, my goal every day is to make a child smile. If I can do that, then I have had a successful day.
I love that. And that really kind of goes to showing you, like, the impact that you've made at a larger level, which is so amazing to see. And what moments, have defined your leadership? Has there been kind of a story or anything that you want to share with our listeners too, has really defined your leadership experience across the space too?
Well, I really define my successes through my students and through my staff. Of course, as a special education teacher, I've always had instructional aides, and my career has primarily been with students with severe emotional and behavioral disorders. So I typically have more than one staff, and creating that team and that community within the classroom where students feel comfortable is what I strive for. So I spend as much time with my staff teaching, talking, getting them comfortable with themselves
Hmm.
so that they can successfully navigate the myriad of issues that our students have. And education has changed so much, and culture has changed so much over my career. I mean, I graduated from college in 1981. So I've been and seen a lot of changes. Interestingly enough, what I find is that the core values of empathy, community, unconditional respect,
Yeah.
and acceptance are the same. They just keep giving them different names. So that's where I focus my energies, both with the staff, because if and typically I have younger staff. Well, and now I definitely do because I'm old. But if I can focus on them and give them those same understandings of the values and help them develop their value system with the students in mind, then I can impact, and we as a community can see more success. So as far as my leadership, there's been so many defining moments, but I've always based my style, I guess, on Stephen Covey's
Okay.
writings, his emotional bank account, where you've got to put in and put in, and then sometimes it's okay to take a withdrawal. But what I've found is especially with the students that we work with now, all of the students, a lot of them are bereft. They have no account. Their account is negative, and we have to continue to build that account over and over and over, regardless of their response to us. It has to be just an unconditional love, if you will, to keep coming back. And then also to look for that win-win solution. When children are not understanding what's happening around them and have these preconceived notions of what is right and wrong that may not be in their best interest, we have to look for some common ground before we can help them develop those good habits. and those safe ways of navigating the world. So looking for those win-wins. And I always want to meet people where they are, people,
Yes.
whomever. I want to pull them along. I don't want to push them because then that creates a situation in which we're butting heads, perhaps,
Yeah.
as opposed to here's our common goal. How can we get there together? And it really takes a completely different approach than when I grew up. When I grew up, I told you what to do, you did it, or you got in trouble, period. There was no in between, you know? And now, you have to find a way to connect with the student before you can tell them no,
Yeah,
right? Because
exactly.
they don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to them. A lot of them have not been told no in no
I
uncertain
think,
circumstances. And if they are told no, they're often eventually can talk their way through it
yes.
and get to where they want to be. So it's a different approach. It's a connection. I go into work early just because I love the kids and there's a lot of the little ones, TK, they're getting so young these days that they're in school. And I have a couple of them that are in my Hearts program and I see them in school and they're struggling and we'll go take a walk. I say, hey, I have to go down here. You want to come help me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so mad. But we walk and we just talk. And I'm mad and I'm upset and I'm not a good person because I'm mad. And instead of getting upset and saying, you need to sit down and do your work, we got to take a walk. We have to
Yes.
get them to a level where they can accept direction because nobody can hear anything when they're that angry. So really approaching it that way. My principal said the other day, well, as I was talking about some situations that I have, which you always do,
Yeah.
and she said that just means we have to love them more. You're absolutely right, absolutely right. So it's always helpful to work with people that have that same understanding and concept and value that you have, so that you remember. Because sometimes things get overwhelming and you forget what's happening and what your goal is. So being able to listen to other people is really, really what I need to do and what I strive to do every single day.
I love that. And I feel like, you did a really good job of also talking a little about the success that you want to define for your program and how you built that out there too. I know you had a really good story too about a fourth grade student that, you kind of mentioned a little bit to me before. I wanted to hear a little bit more on that story too, because I think a lot of times when we learn from examples, kind of reinforces like what our goals and what our objectives are a little bit better. So can you share a little bit more on that story, about that fourth grade student and a little
Yeah,
bit more
I would love
on that
to.
example? Yeah.
And he's still in my heart. So when he came to me, he obviously has some severe reading issues, and you can actually see him try to make the letters make sense on the page. But when you gave him a piece of paper, he could create anything. And I actually had him at summer camp in an expanded learning program, and he created this Jack in the Box all out of paper. And he knows I like Snoopy. So he made me a Snoopy Jack in the Box and it had Snoopy inside. And when you lifted the lid, Snoopy jumped out. And
Mm-hmm.
it was all of construction paper. And we built games and I gave him whatever I could, whatever we were doing, I would have him create it with paper. And you could start to see his confidence grow and how much he was enjoying being at school. When I first met him, he was all inside himself and his head was always down and he wasn't he was not willing to step out of his comfort zone because his confidence was so low. And I finally said to him, I said, look, I will help you with anything you need help
Yeah.
with, but you don't need help to get a pencil. You can do that and it's okay. And if you do it wrong, it's okay.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. And over the next 2 years, I watched him grow into just an awesome young man. The first year I had him, it was the principal's birthday, and he made her. He knew he liked to, and that's the thing about it. Here's a fourth grade student who knows what everybody likes, even the adults around him. So he's got a lot going on for him. He just can't read, and that's okay. He just needs to find a different way to learn. And he made her this beautiful Starbucks cup, and I said, well, do you want to go give it to her? And he just looked at me like, oh, I don't think I can do that. And I said, that's okay. You want me to go with you? Yeah. Come with me. So that was the first year. The next year, when he was a sixth grader, he made this other thing for her that was just even more immaculate. And I said, you want to take it up to her? Yeah, come on, let's go. And he took his buddy who he had taught how to make things, and they
Okay.
both went all by themselves and didn't need any support or anything. They were independent, confident, and ready to go. And it was just an amazing thing to watch him grow that way. And because he had the space to do it, we were able to give him the opportunities where he felt successful and give him enough of those that success and that confidence grew, and therefore moved into his reading, where he's now reading at, when he left in sixth grade, he was only one grade behind.
Okay.
And his auditory comprehension was on grade level. And what was even better was he was able to show that in testing. He didn't just show it,
Oh,
on a personal level. He was actually able to, which I am not a fan of, but it is what it is. The testing, he
that's
was
amazing.
able to manage that. Sometimes extremely frustrating and anxiety producing situation. So that's what I see as a success story,
Yes.
as far as how we can build on people's strengths and students' strengths, and it flows into the other parts of their life. And that's really what we should be doing.
That's amazing. And it's also just amazing to see that like story and how it kind of translated into so many other parts of the student's life too, which is amazing. I'm also kind of curious a little bit on, an example of innovation, within your programs. I think, the students are getting so much out of this and you're seeing so many different areas that they're passionate about. How do you also bring in some of that innovation or some of those new ideas, into your programs on a daily basis? Or even, as you're launching, new semesters and new themes that you're getting feedback from the kids of like, I love this, I don't like this, I want more of this. How do you take that and how do you build that program out even further?
Well, the first thing is that it comes from the top. Our leader of our program is so passionate about inclusion
Mm-hmm.
and supporting all of the students in every way that they need. So she is more than happy to provide us with the funding and with the materials that we can do that. So we're going to they're called Z tags. And what they are, they're like little wristwatches that the kids put
Okay.
on. And you can do, for the littles, you have a pattern on your screen on your watch, and you're looking for another person in the room that has the same pattern.
Oh,
So they're learning patterns, colors. For the older kids, you might have 2 + 2 on your watch and somebody else has 4. So you're looking for the partner. So we're incorporating all of those really cool technology things that the kids are just gaga about into the educational realm, and our basic threes of reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? So incorporating that. So having the support from the top to do that makes life a lot easier, frankly. When you're trying to buy everything and you're trying to create everything, it's an exhausting endeavor,
yes.
for lack of a better word, financially, emotionally, brain-wise, just trying to think of all the creative ideas that when you have basis from the program leaders, it's easy to add on your own piece of it and your own little world, because that's what it is. It's a little world that I have at my elementary school, part of the school day, part of the after school day, part of the community. And it's a lot less overwhelming
Yes.
to have that support in there. We have Ozobots, we have Osmos, we have all the Lego things, all the electrical, you can build your own robot. You can do all of those things, and the kids just love that stuff because, one, it's hands-on.
Yes.
Two, they make it come alive.
Yes.
And free, they can create their own from it. Not only can they have a guideline, but then they can build from that as their confidence builds and as they get better at it. And those are lifetime skills of problem solving, collaboration with other students, all those things that we have to do on a daily basis as adults. Students have to learn that,
Yeah.
but you can't teach it with a piece of paper and a pencil, right? Not effectively. So being able to provide all of these additional hands-on activities and student-driven, they can say to me, I want to play soccer. I want to be in the choir. And we have a choir. We have an after-school choir. We have a drama club. We have a beading club where they can
Yeah.
make their own jewelry. They use the perler beads. We have a drawing club. We have an arts club. We have a technology club. We have just on and on what they're interested in. And that's the beauty of it is I can say, here's what I think. What do you guys like? What don't you like? What are the strengths of not only the students, but also my staff, right?
Exactly.
Because now I've got them bought in, they buy into it because now they can explore their passion with students. And it puts people in a totally different light, in a totally different realm. I have teachers coaching soccer. I have teachers doing a culture club. I have teachers doing a dance club. And now the students not only see them as that teacher,
Mm-hmm.
but here's this person with all of these different activities things that they're passionate about. And it brings the passion back into education because it can get when you're in it and you have constant things that are you have to do this and you have to do that and
Mm-hmm.
we have to get this data and that data and we have to do this with that and that's what happened to the teaching. Sometimes you just get overwhelmed and you don't get to share those passions with the kids because you're so worried about we got to get this done so that
Exactly.
we're ready for that. The after school program allows all of those passions to come through. And when you are happy about what you're doing and your leadership comes through for one, the kids they just mimic that. We have those mirror neurons, right? When somebody walks down the street and you smile back. It's an
Mhm.
automatic, right? So it's the same way with our emotions and our passion as teachers and leaders. That passion grows into the students and the students share that with us. And now they have some of their own defining moments, right? They get to, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And because the teacher's showing them something about the way this robot works, wow, I
Mhm.
can do this too. This is fun. And now we've got them, right? Now they're learning because emotionally they're safe, physically they're safe. We make sure that they have food to eat. If they're still hungry, they can still eat. That's because not all of our students have that.
Yes.
And if we don't provide it, they don't ever have it. And they're so worried about Maslow's hierarchy is
Yeah.
it has to be met. Their basic needs have to be met. And we as leaders and teachers have to remember that there is a reason for students acting the way they are. That's how they're communicating to us because they don't know how to say it in words or they're afraid to. And if we don't listen with all of our senses and help them define that, then we're missing the point.
And I can definitely tell, like, there's so many different areas that, like, you've seen working with so many different students. And I've also really been able to kind of hear from this conversation what really grounds you in this work, right? Because you're so passionate about what you're doing. You're so excited to be there. And I think one thing that I really, I think would be really helpful to for our listeners is hearing a little bit about what advice you would give to emerging education leaders. Because there's a lot of times, when people are looking to transition into leader and, they're thinking about how do I do that? How do I go about this? Sometimes we find our mentorship network. Sometimes we find just a singular mentor in the space who's really great visionary that they want to follow. But I'm also curious of like what specific advice would you give to those emerging leaders in the space and what has been kind of your maybe one or two guiding principles that has helped you, be a strong leader in the space too.
I would say there's a couple different things. One is that don't ever give up on your own values.
Mhm.
Don't don't give that up. If your value system might be a little bit different than somebody else's traditional value system, and what you do works with the kids, don't change it. Don't give it up for someone who says you can't do that. If I had a nickel for everybody that told me, and every time I heard, you can't do that with that kid, I would be a millionaire. I wouldn't have to work anymore. Don't ever give up on what you believe and what you know is right. And the reason and the way that you know that is the response of the students. I have students from way back who have contacted me through um, Facebook, and he said, Miss Black, I hope this is you. I get it. And I understand what you were trying to teach me. And I'm now in the Army, and I now have children, and I now have a successful life. And this was a young man who was a senior in high school, and
Oh.
still he would be aggressive with me. He would verbally and physically, but I stood my ground with him, but I loved him at the same time. And that's what works. That's what works for me. And that's what I believe works for kids is you set your expectations high,
Mm-hmm.
you set your boundaries clear, and then you love them into getting there. And those kinds of things tell me that what I believe in works. It's not because this is what I say is right and that's not. It's because of the reactions that I'm getting from the students. So one is don't give up on your values. Don't give up on being creative. Don't give up on being innovative. It's what our educational system needs. The second thing is keep looking till you find that mentor. Frankly, I didn't find mine. I just went into it. Boom, I like to be in charge, and that was always my personality.
Yeah.
So I just did it. But when I came to California, I was in a county program at the time, and Artie became my mentor
Okay.
and helped me learn how to be a more effective leader, because otherwise I was just, we're doing it, let's go. But she was able to teach me how to teach the staff so that everybody was following the same plan, and therefore we were impacting all of the students as opposed to just those that got it basically on their own. So don't give up. Don't give up your values. Don't give up looking. And finally, when you get there, don't stop listening. You don't know it all. You need to meet people where they are, and you will come across a lot of resistance. People don't like to change. They don't like to change. So we have to give them reasons to change, and we have to constantly model. I remember having some leaders that were not didn't have the experience that I had
Okay.
with students. Okay. They were strictly education population and did not understand what was happening. And I would think, okay, you want me to do that? First of all, I've done all of those things that you said to do already, or I wouldn't be here asking you for help. And second of all, you come do that in my classroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got kids laying on the floor, I've got kids throwing tantrums, I've got somebody running out the door, and I'm supposed to be teaching a lesson. So don't ever stop listening to what people are telling you,
Mm-hmm.
and be open and honest with them. It's okay to say, I have never had that experience, but let's go through it together. How much respect do you gain by admitting that you don't know everything, right? There will be a few that will say, oh, you don't know everything, I'm not listening to you. Well, that's okay, because they're not going to listen to you if you do. You know everything. So don't give up on your values. Don't be afraid to learn from others, and don't think that you always have to be in control.
I love that. And, I think that kind of goes also into like one of my last questions. What would that advice be that you would give your younger self so you could kind of reflect back and like learn from that too?
Patience and
Okay.
clarity.
Yeah.
I got so much better working with my staff, and therefore the students gained more
I see.
when I was able to articulate what I wanted them to do and why I wanted them to do it. A lot of what I did was instinctual when I was younger. I couldn't explain it. I would just say, you just have to do it. And I would think, how can I explain this to somebody so that they get it? And I actually had a great guy who just constantly said, I don't understand why you're doing this. So I would have to really break it down and talk about the theory behind it, the science behind it, and then how do we actually do it? Because anybody can read the
Yeah.
theory, anybody can understand the science, but to be able to break that down into actionable pieces. And I think I would have been better had I been able to do that.
That's awesome. And then my last final question, because I feel like you know so much about good podcasts, good books, good resources. Is there a leader or a book or some, podcast that you've been listening to or you follow that's really inspired you with your work in general or just like across your day to day? Because, I'm sure sometimes you need a break, you need that little reset. And is there someone or something that, has given you that, ability to do so effectively?
So I would say I'm terrible with names. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
and the guy's name is right on the tip of my tongue. But he brought forth and kind of brought it to the forefront of culture and society. And 10, something like that. I just can't remember. But that's what he actually sparked my research into empathy
Okay.
and the facets of empathy and neuroscience and how all of that works together. And all of, and it's interesting because what we used to call fluff, right, is having the kids talk about what's happening, talk about their emotions, mindfulness,
Mhm.
all of those things used to be the fluff of education. And now it's become much more of a priority.
I know all our listeners and myself personally, I always look for are other resources. And I think sometimes, it's hard to go and you're used to your routine, your, podcasts, your books. It's great to see what other people are listening to too, to inspire you and to hear that. So that's awesome to hear. And Jessica, I just want to say your work is amazing. You've done so much across the space, inspired so many students. Even from your stories and your examples, I can tell the impact that you've made to your students and the children you've worked with. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing some of your wisdom, and for really capturing that to our listeners. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I enjoyed it and appreciate you having me on. It's been
Thank
fun.
you.